Uber is illegal. I'm like, what do you guys mean? What do y'all mean? What do you mean Uber is illegal? Hello, divine beings. Welcome to my channel. My name is Waisha, and the goal of this channel is to share my point of view, with mindfulness, travel, and conscious living. So whether you're new or you're returning, I'm giving thanks and sending love and light to you and yours. All right, let's get into it. For those of you that don't know, I am solo traveling in Costa Rica right now. And right now it's the month of July, 2023. I'm here on a trip and I'll be here for 3 weeks. So I had to learn the hard way that Uber is illegal. It's interesting because I was reading up online and everyone was saying like, hey, you could take an Uber, around pretty easily. My Airbnb host said you could take Ubers everywhere. Technically, they're not lying. Yeah, let's get into it. Well, why is Uber illegal? Same question I had. So turns out that taxis have to go through a lot of regulations and licensing that is required by the government to operate. So the government was concerned that Uber doesn't follow any of those regulations or licensing, which they figured could cause problems and even potentially safety concerns. But regardless of the laws that are here and the country clearly making Uber illegal, it's still thriving here. And I mean thriving. I'm gonna break down the main things that you should consider and be aware of if you still decide to ride around in Ubers here in Costa Rica. So let's get started. Okay, number 1, international arrivals. If you are coming into Costa Rica from another country and you get here and you need a ride to either your hotel, your Airbnb, or wherever you're residing in the country, I highly recommend you take a taxi or set up something with a private driver so that they could pick you up from the airport. The reason being is that if you order an Uber when you're at the airport, you may have some trouble getting to your Uber. So for example, I got here, I made the mistake, I took one for the team, y'all. I came here and I was leaving the airport and I was speaking to an official and I said, hey, I want to call an Uber. Where do I meet my Uber here at the airport? And he said, no, Uber's illegal. I said, I don't know what you mean. What you talking about? I looked up on the internet. Everybody said I could take an Uber. My Airbnb host said that I could take an Uber without any problems. What do you mean I can't take an Uber? My Uber app worked. I watched the Uber come my way. The Uber driver messaged me. I'm like, Uber's clearly working. Anyways, the reason I would recommend just getting a taxi or hiring a personal driver is because it's quite challenging to get to your Uber because the airport has it set up to where Ubers cannot come and pick you up from the international travels. Because where my Uber driver was trying to meet me, it was a stretch. I said, hey, I can't walk to the other side of the airport, and to do so I have to go back through. It was just a lot. So long story short, you guys, if you're coming in internationals, don't take an Uber. It would actually save you money because calling the Uber may be cheap, but canceling it, they charge you double. So let's save some money, y'all. Look, I took one for the team, so you don't have to, okay? All right. So number 2, getting around in the city. So right now I am based in San Jose. I figured it would be a good place to reside because I'm working online and I just wanted to make sure that I'm in a centralized place where I could walk to the grocery store if needed, where I could Uber. Shoot, if I'm having, a busy day where I could order Uber Eats, you know what I'm saying? So I recommend that if that's something you need. But nevertheless, getting around day to day, I would recommend an Uber. Yep. And it's funny that I got to this point because at first I had some experiences that were really uncomfortable because I just didn't know what was going on. But turns out Costa Rica developed a culture around how to get around with Airbnbs. So I'm gonna give you guys some tips that would potentially make your life a bit easier here if you decide to come visit and take Ubers to get around. So I like to start off with saying, if you order Uber, get in the front seat. I know that may sound crazy, hear me out. I had an experience where I got in an Uber and I got in the back seat. And he's speaking Spanish, by the way. Mind you, I don't speak much Spanish, but I could tell that he's saying, no, don't get back there, get in the front seat. And at first I was like, who are you talking to? You want me to get in the front seat for what? I don't know you like that. You know what I'm saying? Get in the front seat for what? And then, he was explaining to me, so, in Spanish, of course, so I didn't understand the thing he was saying. So I got in the front seat, but I left the door open and I looked at him, I said, now, why am I required in the front seats? And he said, because Uber is illegal. I was like, am I in the Twilight Zone? Initially, I was like, you better hit the streets running. This dude is a little sus, you know what I'm saying? But in the same time, my spirit felt really calm. And usually when I feel that, that's a suggestion or an indication to me that things are okay. You could, proceed. But in the same time, I'm like, so I said, okay, fine. I shut the door and I was like, we in it now. We in it now. He starts driving and, I'm still a little uncomfortable because I just don't know about the situation here. So I'm trying to talk to him like, hey, so could you tell me a bit more about why Uber is illegal here? And just, asking questions. Mind you, he's responding in Spanish. So it's like, I'm not really, I don't know what I was thinking, as if I could understand what he's saying back to me. But in the moment, I felt more comfortable with the fact that, hey, we're having a conversation. You know what I'm saying? Like, it gave me some type of ease. I took him to my location, I got out the car, and then I was like, okay, that was crazy. But at the time, I was in a restaurant, and I was watching a couple of other cars pull up, and turns out they were all Ubers. And I noticed that everyone was getting out the front seat, and then they were coming in the restaurant. And I said, oh, I wonder, is that a part of this whole setup here? And it is. So the reason why they want you to sit in the front seat is because Uber is illegal. Yes, I know that sounds crazy. But the reason being is that if you sit in the front seat, they're less likely to get pulled over by the police, because since Uber is illegal, they'll be the ones to get in trouble. So to not appear as if they're clearly Ubering, by having people in the back seat, they will suggest that you get in the front seat. So that's just heads up on that. Sit in the front seat if you decide to order Uber, and things will be fine. Some other advice that I would give for those that want to travel around the city, and I actually got this from a guy that I met here, is to choose an Uber SUV or an Uber VIP. And the reason being is usually those are higher ranked Ubers, right? So usually they're like 4.9 stars and above. So that way you could at least narrow down to ensure that you're getting a decent Uber driver so that you're not out here in these streets. All right, well, that's another tip that I learned from him, and it could be helpful, so something to consider. So number 3 is safety. This I definitely want to talk about because initially I was like, okay, with Ubers being illegal, that to me feels unsafe. But if I'm honest with y'all, the idea of getting in a taxi out here is even more scary. The reason why I would actually recommend taking an Uber, although it's illegal, don't come for me. The reason why I would recommend taking an Uber is because Uber has a lot of built-in safety features that made me feel comfortable as a solo traveler out here, right? So for example, when you're driving around in Ubers, you're able to send your rides or your trips to your friends and family. So whenever I got in the Uber, I was sending notifications to my friends, my sisters. So I was like, yo, I'm in an Uber. This is where I'm going. Please check in on me. You know what I'm saying? So that's number 1. 2, you could watch the map and see if they are going in the correct direction or if they make any turns or anything, So you're able to kind of monitor the ride a bit more. You know what I'm saying? So that's definitely one thing that felt super important to me. And the third is that you have all of their information on the app. You have the license plate, you have usually the name of the driver, the image. So what I do is, if sending trips isn't enough, take a screenshot. You know what I'm saying? Take a screenshot and make sure you have the information to the police, any type of emergency, situation to where you can call immediately and, get help. But nevertheless, it still feels a bit safer than taking a taxi where, you hop in the car and then you just got to put all your faith in this driver that they're going to take you where you need to go. So number 4, if you are a woman and you're solo traveling, I wouldn't recommend taking Ubers far distances by yourself. For example, I actually ended up going on a trip with a guy that I met out here, and we decided to take an Uber to this location, to the mountains, and it was about a 2-hour drive. So we're going out, and mind you, this is the area that is more rural. Am I saying that right? Rural. It's more country. It's the countryside. So we're going through the mountains, and there were a few times where I'm watching the Uber trip and then my connection just drops because the Wi-Fi is choppy in certain areas, and the connection becomes a little shaky. As a solo traveler, I wouldn't recommend that. I don't think that's a good idea. So luckily, I had a guy with me who was also watching the trip, and, it just made me feel a little bit more safe. But if I was traveling by myself, that would make me feel very uncomfortable because if they are aware, like, hey, this area has no signal, we ain't even gonna go into all of that. But anyway, so if you're traveling around the city or locally or any of the big areas that has a lot of connection, Wi-Fi, life, then Uber is great. But if you're going far off into areas of the country that is a bit more isolated, a bit more countryside, then I would recommend thinking twice about taking an Uber to those locations. All right, so overall, although Uber is illegal, I would still highly recommend it if you are taking an Uber around, a location that you are at. I would not recommend Uber for international arrivals and traveling long distances, mainly if you're a woman. Maybe if you're a man, things may be okay, or that could be a bad bias that I'm having. May have to look into that. But anyways, for those of you that are thinking of taking a solo trip out to Costa Rica, or a trip at all, it could be with your friends, family, it doesn't matter. I would highly recommend this country. I have all intentions to return and see a bit more of the country, preferably bringing someone the next time, because with me being by myself, I am limiting myself a little bit, but the country is absolutely beautiful and I know you will enjoy it. And hopefully you have all the information now to navigate with Ubers. So, all right, that's all. Peace and love, family.